Well. Hmm. Gave me a reason to wear this hat. Wow. Where do I even start except probably saying congratulations? And I get to say this for the first time. How does it feel to be a Grammy nominee?
Hi, Rudy. Nice hat. Nice hat. Um, it feels amazing. It's still surreal. It's now been 2.5, well, almost 3 weeks since the nomination. And it's still pretty surreal, but it has begun to sink in as we've been making plans, booking air travel, thinking about red carpet looks, figuring out how to promote and make the most of this moment, all the logistics.
Has this one nomination changed your whole life?
Yeah. Yeah, it has. And not just in the profile, how it's elevated my profile,
Yes.
both here in Canada and also stateside, possibly even globally to some degree, but also in what it has done for me in terms of my internal landscape and how I perceive my career trajectory as a woman in midlife, right? I just turned 45 and it really felt, Rudy, like I was beginning not to wind down, but to start to kind of rejig how I focus my time, my energy, my resources, looking towards the future. And this Grammy has been wonderfully disruptive to all of that.
There's so much I want to ask, but there's another question that I'm dying to ask. Okay. And this might be a little sarcastic, but you'll understand why I'm asking this. Have you had people who maybe you've not heard from in years or did not, if I can say, not truly support you suddenly come out of whatever rock they crawled from and knowing, hey, buddy, how's it going? Congratulations.
Yes. Yes. And what has been a challenge, we'll call it, is that, that first day, November 7th, my phone, my direct messages on Instagram, Facebook, um, and my computer, my email inbox, everything exploded. Literally hundreds, if not at this point, thousands of messages, comments, texts, phone calls. It was so overwhelming. And I was charmed in a way, and especially initially by the breadth of reach. So, from like immediate friends and family and colleagues, industry people to like that childhood classmate. And there were a few instances, admittedly, where I thought, okay, someone's edging in on that Grammy noise, that stardust, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, I will say that I'm still the same person, and my
Yes.
day-to-day life, while there are some new things I'm dealing with in regards to the Grammys, everything is still essentially the same. But I think that the way people perceive me is also somewhat changed. And
Yes.
and so I'm just conscious of that. I still want to serve my family, friends, community, and peers, known and unknown, or well known and lesser known, as best I can, because I've been such a beneficiary of the generosity of other people. So I feel like I have a duty to continue to pay that forward as best I can. But there are grifters. there there are grifters, and so it's so funny you should ask. You're the only person who thought to ask about that.
Yeah, no, see the reason why I have to is because we've been doing this for years. So, one of the things I try to credit my career on is never jumping on bandwagons, trying to get people when they're not as known, and as much as I can help them with their career through doing interviews on my platforms. I've been doing that from day one and still continue. So when I saw that you got this Grammy nomination, first, I was thrilled and I sent you a note. I sent you several notes saying congratulations. Wasn't sure you were going to see it. The other thing that I kept thinking to myself was, man, she's going to be so busy now. I wonder if I'm going to get an interview with you. And you said, no, we're going to make sure this happens. So, for folks who don't realize this, we're doing this interview in November. This isn't going to come out until the week of the Grammys because I know you're going to be
Oh,
super busy. The third thing I thought about was, man, I wonder if those people who did not support her are now playing like she's my best friend. She's a Grammy nominee because I always find this stuff happens all the time.
I think it's human nature, and at the end of the day, Rudy, I feel it's not my job to judge. I just
Yes.
have to manage my time as best I can. I keep saying as best I can, but that's kind of the theme of the day. As best I can. That's what I tell my 15-year-old son, as best you can. And so I'm thrilled that so many people want to share in this moment. It has felt like a community win. It's
Yes.
even felt like a country win, like a countrywide win in that I know that this is a unique moment in which I get to represent Canada. I am a dual citizen. I became a dual citizen not quite 10 years ago. I spent a long time living in New York City. I'm married to an American who just became a dual citizen himself. But of course, I'm first and foremost and thoroughly Canadian, and the project itself is so very Canadian. So that to me is such a privilege to get to represent our country stateside on, at one of the most prestigious events in music in the world. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to that. What the exact Grammy nomination was, because that surprised the heck out of me. And of course, the recording that was nominated, because this was also nominated for Juno, if I remember correctly, because
It
that was the
was.
last interview that we did.
It was indeed. So to start, the nomination is in the category Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album. And just as a brief backstory, I submitted Wintersongs, the album that has been nominated and was nominated for a Juno earlier this year, although now when people hear this, it'll be last year, so 2025. I had submitted it to the Grammys for Grammy consideration is the language we use for alternative jazz. I knew that it wasn't necessarily a vocal jazz album by their criteria because as with, for example, Katie George, who won the vocal jazz Juno when we were in that category together
Yes.
in 2025, the Grammys are looking for an expression of vocal jazz that includes lots of improvisation from the singer themselves and just some markers that really lean into that tradition. And Winter Songs is enough of an amalgam or a hybrid that I thought, okay, this is chamber jazz, this is pop jazz, this is kind of songwritery. They're art songs, like I don't even know quite how to describe it. And so in Canada, I knew that I would put it in vocal jazz because that's just who I am. That's how I'm seen here. In the States, there's still this opportunity to kind of, paint outside the lines a bit and see where they think I ultimately fit. Not that I'm defined by the Grammy committees, but as it happened, I submitted to alternative jazz. The alternative jazz committee, which I have since learned is a thing, they vetted all the entrants. So hundreds of people submitting to that category. And they're the ones that go, no, 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 we think that belongs in this category. So they sent it over to the people, the committee that vets entrants for traditional pop vocal. And that committee said, yeah, this record makes sense here. So they accepted it. And I found out the day before the voting period opened, which was my birthday, October 3rd. And as I like to tell the story, Rudy, at that point, people started offering me their condolences. All my peers and even my followers and fans on social media, they all went, "What? No, pop, Lady Gaga, Elton John, like that's not fair. They saw it as like something that was not fair to me, right? Because understandably, they felt it completely narrowed, if not eliminated, any chance of a nomination. Because people are seeing who's been nominated alongside me. What they're not seeing is that Jeff Goldblum was in that category, Seth MacFarlane was in that category, Ringo Starr was in that category, Antonia Bennett, Tony Bennett's daughter, Belinda Carlisle, Christina Aguilera, Lea Salonga, like Ben Folds. The list just goes on and on and on. All these names that are so much bigger than me were also entrants and did not get nominated. And so, yeah, it just seemed like an impossibility.
It's possible, and that's what you did. And here's the best part, because what you just mentioned, I've got to double check. Because as you know, the Grammys are the day of the Grammys. It's split up. You have the non-televised,
Yeah.
and then you have the televised. I think you're going to be on the televised, especially because of those names.
Well,
So my fingers are crossed that that part is going to happen, because the non-televised, which is amazing, is long. It is a long process to go through. I'm crossing my fingers you're going to be on the televised.
here's what I've heard.
Mhm.
So I have not Googled myself almost at all since this happened. But
Yeah.
at one point I had to because I was looking for category specific information. And I was hoping to find a link to the Grammy website where all the categories were listed. But I did see a couple articles. And what was so interesting, I think one was from Billboard, another was a publication I didn't recognize, but the theme of both those articles, and the Billboard one again was pre-nominations. It was just during the voting period. It was published in early October. They were looking at best traditional pop vocal and saying, okay, this is part of the jazz field, jazz and music theater field, and
Mhm.
contemporary instrumental field. That is a field with categories that are always part of the pre-televised awards.
Yes.
But they were saying, look at the people in traditional pop vocal. Like, how can we not include this with the televised segment? That said, I don't know if the Grammys, if the Recording Academy and CBS, I don't know if they can pivot. I feel like their process in terms of what is included in pre-televised versus televised is written in stone. It's like the Ten Commandments.
That's
You
the,
know?
it's true. But if you've noticed especially the last 2 or 3 years, they've really tried to change things up, even with the broadcast and having people sitting at a table. Because I know when I went, and I covered it for 3 years, it was
Wow.
literally like well, that's how I was able to get the hat. You sat in an audience production. But if I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, they actually had sort of like an audience, but they also had like a dinner table set up.
With
So
nominees.
for the nominees. So that's what I'm saying. I hope it changes and I get to see you sitting next to like Beyonce and Jay-Z and going, yeah, I got a nomination. What'd you get? Kind of thing. So I am so happy for you. Has sales kicked up for the album since this has happened?
Yeah, so there's definitely like a bit of a Grammy effect. It's slowed down since, but initially, for the first week and a half or so, I was getting sales just from my website for hard copy albums multiple times a day, which was awesome and super exciting, and a huge uptick for sure. And then if we look at, say, Spotify, I know some people have really mixed feelings right now about Spotify, but just as a metric, um, my listenership that day went way up, like that one day. And then it's kind of gone back down again. But what's so cool about the way in which the listenership went up, what some people may not know is that behind the scenes, we'll say backstage. So
Yeah.
backstage on Spotify, as an artist or label, you get to see where all the streams are coming from. Are people saving the music? And the thing that I had been told by one of my managers over the years was editorial playlists are great and they will ramp up people's numbers massively. So you can see artists go from streaming, let's say, in the hundreds to streaming in the millions as an extreme example if they get on a massive playlist. But while that looks good and the optics are good, it doesn't necessarily translate to true fans or listeners. What you want to see is you want to see people going to the artist's profile and listening off of their page directly. And then the other thing you want to see is you want to see them saving those tracks they're listening to. And what I saw that was so encouraging was suddenly, like, the percentage of streams I was getting from people just going to my profile, that went way up. And people were saving the music. So to me, what that suggests is they were going, who is this Laila Biali person? And then they, I hope, liked the music enough to save it and make it part of their own listening library. And that's the goal. Like, Grammy or no Grammy, nomination or no nomination, as a musician, the dream, the thing that gives us meaning is reaching ears and, if you don't mind me saying it, I know it sounds cheesy, hearts, right? We're trying to make some sort of a positive impact through our music in people's lives. That's the goal.
Has Humber contacted you yet?
Oh, yes. And I can't believe it. So what happened, Rudy, was I saw all these emails and texts come in, and you know how you can, like, see the preview?
Mm-hmm.
So I saw the preview from Jason Marai, the associate dean, I believe is his title of music at Humber, and I saw Guillermo Acosta, who's like the senior dean of the whole department. These are heavyweights, but they're so sweet and so supportive. And I still, they're the emails that have remained unopened are the ones that got sent day one. And so I'm still chipping away. And the way my brain works, I do everything in reverse chronological order. So I still haven't responded to so many important people who wrote to me that fateful day. So if you're listening and you still haven't gotten a response and it's almost February, oh my goodness. I hope by now I have actually caught up on the inbox.
You will. You will. Here's another interesting question. Has your Grammy nomination changed your son's love life?
That's so funny. Well, it's given him some cred. And okay, so here's what makes me laugh, Rudy. And it's so sweet. So I did break one of our rules. I totally broke a rule. Our son has his phone. We do everything in our power to make sure he's not using it during class time. And in this instance, I called him. I called him during his class, and he picks up and Mom, I'm in class, and I said, I've just been nominated for a Grammy. We're going to the Grammys, because of course he's coming. And I don't know if he's going to be allowed to walk the red carpet. There are some really strict rules around all that,
Yes.
but he's coming. He's coming to LA. And so then thereafter, like shortly thereafter, he's telling me about his friends' reactions and even as recently as this past, and again, I know you said we're having this conversation in late November. So a few days ago, he had some friends over and they all came upstairs and they said, would you please perform Rocky Mountain Lullaby for us? These are 15-year-old boys. They're listening to the Opium rappers, Destroy Lonely and Playboi Carti and Ken Carson and then like, Travis Scott and Don Toliver and like, that's what they're listening to. They're not listening. But then my son also told me that his friend was hosting a party and they played Rocky Mountain Lullaby, which is not party music. I mean, it's hysterical, but it's so, so, so sweet. And a lot of them know who Leve is because Leve, my co-nominee, she's Gen Z.
Yeah.
The rest of us are all in our, between our 40s and 70s. I don't know how old Elton John and Barbra Streisand are, but Brandy Carlisle and I think are around the same age. She might be a little younger, but we're all like we're all Gen X or older boomers. And and Leve is Gen Z. So I remember when Josh was 13 and he was coming home and playing her music to me. And I just thought that was so exciting because she's not your typical, teenage listening choice, I would say. And I think that's part of her magic is she's opened up this whole audience of listeners that are way younger and are now embracing, some would call it jazz, some would call it mid-century modern music, let's call it traditional pop. And that's exciting.
I am so happy for you. If there is anybody who deserves this journey, it is you. I'm going to start wrapping this up, and I just have to say that I will be watching. My fingers will be crossed. I hope you get to go to every Grammy party. Go to the Grammy Museum for some of their concerts if you have a chance during that time too. But win or lose, you still win in all of our hearts. Like I said, you so deserve this. Congratulations. And I cannot wait till when we do another interview that you can put your Juno over here and your Grammy over here. And it's just like, yeah, I love it.
Rudy, you've been part of this journey for decades now, I want to say. Maybe it hasn't been that long. It feels like it has. It feels like it's been more than 10 years.
It has more than
Um,
10 years.
More than 10 years, and we're both proud Humber Polytechnic. It was Humber College back in our day, but Humber alumni. And
Mhm.
in that sense, like you and I are in the same family, and you've been such a champion. And as you said at the outset of this conversation, you're not somebody who's only there for the high points, those peak moments. You're there in the valleys with people as they're working it through. Because I think, even Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter, maybe even David Foster, like the list goes on, all of us are having those moments where we feel like we've got challenges we're facing or mountains to climb. And so it's just really fun to be able to enjoy a peak experience with you. And thank you for that.